Hi, welcome. I am so excited. Today we have a special podcast going on, Two Gals in a Glass Half Full. Let's first, Joy, why don't you introduce you and your podcast?
Hey, so I am Coach Joy. I am a nationally board certified health and well-being coach. I also have certifications in stress management, a couple sleep certifications, and a women's wellness education certification. But I also am a mama to 8 kiddos. I have my podcast, Healthier Habits Mama, that I am trying to encourage moms to be able to set healthier habits and raise their family while they work from home. So just trying to encourage that and allow them that opportunity to take good care of themselves.
I love it.
Awesome.
I love it. And us being moms, like we obviously resonate with like what you're talking about. So what better way than to kind of cross share information, which is very fun.
And then Dr. Jess, would you like to introduce our podcast before we find out what's in your cup?
Absolutely. So I'm Dr. Jess. I co-host a podcast with Dr. Bobbie. It's called Two Gals and a Glass Half Full, because you know what? We got to reframe that thinking. Half full. My background is I'm owner and founder of Core Essentials Physical Therapy and Wellness. I am also a mom that likes to keep balance in my life, in my house, parenting, and with my work life. So a lot of what we share on the podcast is stuff that we've learned along the way and interview other people that know more than we do, and just see if we can have one small step at a time to really help make some, just overall better choices in life, and it makes you feel healthier and happier. So Dr. Bobbie, let's tell, what's your background?
So I also do the podcast with Dr. Jess, but I am a physical therapist. I'm owner and founder of Level Up Osteopractic. I am recently a new mom. We just celebrated our first Christmas. She's 6 months old, so that was fun and just a busy time of life. But I feel like you guys, with a few more years ahead of me, can say it always is busy and it's always changing and there's always challenges at every stage of being a mom.
Absolutely. So Joy, what's in your glass this morning?
Well, this morning, after I've already finished my coffee with collagen and creamer, I now have some green tea Zen that has a little bit of citrus and a little bit of spearmint in it.
I like it. Sounds good. Dr. Bobbie, what's in your glass?
I have just water today. I was going to get coffee this morning, but running a little late, and my little one was having a little trouble leaving after being with me for a few days. So,
yep, when you're off your schedule, it definitely makes it a little bit harder to get back into your routine. And this morning I'm working on my coffee. I've got that with a little bit of half and half low acidic bean. That way it doesn't bother me at all. It's great. So today we're going to be talking about fitness and goal setting in 2024. So Joy, with her podcast and Two Gals, in December, we talked a lot about just how to make goals. Like what does that even look like for it to be realistic and something that you can put into place? So now we're going to get into some subtopics to really say, like, what can I do with fitness and how can I make this something that I can realistically implement? So as far as, recommendations with fitness, Joy, where would you kind of start with this kind of a topic? Considering somebody might not have listened in December and doesn't really have even like a background in like how to actually get those steps in place.
Well, usually I start by asking, what are you doing right now? Because if you are aiming to be active, you want to start where you're at. You don't want to set this goal of, I'm going to do a 60-minute walk 5 days a week when you've not been doing anything at all. So really kind of reviewing where you're at, what you're actually doing at the moment, and then deciding, okay, let's make something a little bit smaller, because oftentimes when we choose a really big goal, we're not going to hit it. So coming up with some smaller options, maybe a few times a week versus, 5 or 7 days, and finding something that you enjoy, because that's going to be the key to being active. If it's not something you like, let's say you hate the gym, why would you go to the gym then? Or, maybe you don't like to lift weights, so that wouldn't be the first thing that you would do. You want to pick something that you actually enjoy and want to put into place.
Right.
I think finding your passion with exercise, and a lot of times people have this vision of exercise, as you said, Joy, is going to the gym. I got to go to the gym, I got to run on the treadmill, and I have to lift weights. And the reality is exercise and fitness and being healthy and active is so much more than just a gym membership, or even a home gym, home gym membership.
Right.
There's a lot you can do, and finding that passion is what's going to make it sustainable.
Mhm. Yeah, I think like when I say journaling, that doesn't mean like you're writing paragraphs about your every feeling and thought. I don't do that. So journaling is something I use when I'm getting started with something, whatever's new to me, where I can just get some thoughts down of what's my why in whatever it is I'm wanting to do. Because I think if I can start with understanding my why, it helps me with the tangible steps that come next. Otherwise, I'm kind of probably doing it for somebody else and not for me. But if it's a goal for me, I need to know why I'm doing it. And then it makes life easier. So like I literally just will just words, like it doesn't even have to be complete sentences. And then, the next page really scattered. And then the next page I'll turn it over, and then I'll start to get it a little bit more together. So it might have a few sentences that are very targeted. And then I'm like, okay, I can put my finger on that. That's why I want to do this. And then from there, I can start saying, okay, well, then what steps do I need to take? So that's kind of
finding a purpose
exactly.
behind what you're actually wanting to do
Yeah.
and why you're doing it.
Right. And then, with fitness, it's one of those things where I think it's society and culture tells us we should look a certain way. We should weigh a certain amount of weight. BMI is, what every healthcare practitioner is going to, document. Height versus weight gives you a number, and that number needs to fall within this range. And that's not real, right? So like we have different body types. We've got ectomorphs, which are really long and skinny. We've got mesomorphs, which are, a little bit more like the bones are bigger, just bigger density in general. I mean, you can tell as kiddos, like my firstborn is not an ectomorph. He's definitely he's just more stocky. My secondborn is definitely more of an ecto. He's just long and lanky. And so it's just their BMIs will always be different. So when we do like goals for fitness based on like a certain number on the scale or a certain way you look, I think sometimes we can lose some of the nuance of the why, So what are some of your whys, Joy? Like what are the whys?
Oftentimes I think about health in general, because maybe family members have, some kind of an illness or have some kind of a chronic condition going on. Like I have family members who have diabetes and high blood pressure. So for me, I want to make sure that I don't end up that way. I want to be able to stay healthy because number one, I have 8 kiddos. All of them are adults except for one, and I have 2 grandsons. So I want to be able to be active and be with them and spend time with them. So I have to think about how do I stay active and how do I keep myself going? And with the job that I currently have as a full-time health coach, I had to figure out a way of making it happen. So I now have a desk treadmill, so that in between clients, I can hop on that for a few minutes when I wasn't able to do a lot of walking. So I have to think about them versus, okay, I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing it for me so I can spend the time with them.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
purpose and why is so important.
Yeah. And I think when you think about it in terms of health, it completely changes everything. So exercise, whether it's cardiovascular, strength training, whatever, it actually benefits every system of your body. So your endocrine system, your neuro system, neuromuscular system, all like cardiovascular system, in addition to musculoskeletal bones, ligaments, muscles, every system benefits. So it benefits in the now and it acts as preventative for
Mhm.
things that can break down in the future. So you can avoid the reactions that is so common in our healthcare system. We wait until, oh, blood sugar is high, let's go ahead and get you on some medication. Or, oh, you've been trending up for the last 5 years with the blood pressure, so let's get you on some medication for that. And all of a sudden now, you start with one medication, and then two, and then three,
Mhm.
and then four. And we
Mhm.
know the more medications that we start adding, the increased risk of side effects,
Mhm.
dizziness, all sorts of other things that happen. And it's just this cascade that happens. And from, being in this field for a little while now, like I've noticed a huge difference when I have a patient that comes in their 70s or 80s and are on no prescriptions at all compared to the person that's on 5, 6, 7, 10, 15, medications. It's a very different presentation. The person on none is typically like, my shoulder's a little achy when I'm playing tennis, and they're like 80. The other person is having a really hard time, can't get off the floor, and they're in their 60s. It's just very different qualities of life. And I think me seeing that like daily helps me go, well, I don't want that, I want my body to continue to function at a high level. And so you start pouring into the research and you really see like it legitimately, exercise, movement is huge. It's not your only answer. Mental health, nutrition, all of that other stuff is
Right.
a big part of it, but movement is huge. And I like using the word movement sometimes instead of necessarily exercise, because movement feels like I can do that, right?
Mhm.
So
Not as big. It's not as,
Right.
yeah, it's
it's
not as
something more
overwhelming.
obtainable.
Mhm. Yeah.
Joy, have you heard of the blue zones?
No, I don't believe I have heard of those. What are
Okay.
those?
So I was reading more. Jess and I have kind of recently become a little obsessed with it. It's really interesting. So just a little bit. But a guy, he has been researching for the last, like it was 20, 25 years. There's 5 areas in the world where people live. There's the highest percentage of people that make it to 100, but they're living healthy lives. They're out there independent, still working, some of them, and it's super interesting. And one of the big factors they found, like I think it was 8, it's 8 or 9, I think it's 8 though, major things that are reasons why they are living longer. And one of the big ones is movement. And he found that the people that live the longest in these areas, they don't own a gym, they don't work out, they don't run, they've never lifted a weight a day in their lives, but they have to walk to everywhere they want to go. They live in a town where society is meant to walk. You walk up hills, you move. They're out gardening every day. They're out. And one guy was like in his 90s, almost 100, and still riding horses and taking them, like working with them. So it's just very interesting to see that people living the longest and the healthiest are not that a gym's wrong, I think, and I need to make that clear, but they're just doing everyday activities. And so I find that just very interesting because those are things we can do. We could park a little further from the grocery store and walk in. We could take the stairs instead of the escalator each time. Just little things.
Yeah, I think getting your steps in per day now with like the wearable technology, it really helps to make you aware of how much did I move today. And like I can kind of see my my rings and whatnot, and there's days where I'm like, I feel like I was so busy, and I was at my desk. And I'll look at my watch and it's like I'm a quarter of the way through my steps for the day. And so it's like, well, looks like we're gonna go on a walk around the neighborhood tonight. Like and that's
Right.
things we can do, right? Like I can do that with the kiddos. We can, go around the neighborhood, get the bikes out, do something like that. And then I'm not having to like work out and lift a bunch of weight. It's just ways to be aware of how much you're moving. So Joy, what are other ways that we can kind of increase the awareness of our baseline? Like, how do we even know where we are right now?
Well, like I said, just kind of thinking about what am I doing right now? What are the activities I can actually do? And looking at if you have wearable technology or even just your phone, because if you have your phone with you, most of them can actually track the steps that you're doing. So you can see which days you're more active and think about where you're going, how many steps you're getting in. And I know that back when I was pregnant with my youngest, I actually had gestational diabetes. And so I had to figure out a way to be active while I still had all my other kiddos around. And what I actually did was, we didn't live in an area that I could go out and really walk very well. So I did laps inside my house. And I would just walk around inside my house and, time how long I was walking for. And once we moved to this house, I could still do the same thing. I could still be talking to people and I would be checking on my computer, but I would do laps inside the house, or I would do stairs inside my house. And even with some of the clients that I talk with now, because of the pandemic, so many people were working from home and still do that. The bathroom's 10 steps away, the kitchen's 20 steps away. So getting up and either getting, like a desk treadmill or something like that can add to your steps. But taking that pause every hour to do 5 minutes of walking, whether it's inside your house or you go out in your yard, or putting a break in your day where you can go get a short walk in, or maybe you have a jump rope, or just various things like that that you can potentially do. And if you are in the office, instead of going to the bathroom that's the closest, you go the farthest and you do the stairs to get to work. I have people that tell me, that we've been working together for a couple months. They're like, I have to do 3 flights of stairs to get up. But the other day I just noticed I can do them better now than what I did before. And they didn't add a whole lot of additional things other than using the stairs every time they're exercising, and maybe doing a couple of laps outside the building, once or twice a day.
Mhm.
Those little things add up, and I think we don't place enough don't place enough emphasis on how important those little things are. The 30-minute run on the treadmill is once a week or twice a week is not as important as those steps every single day.
Yeah. And then it starts changing your mindset a little bit, right? So all of a sudden, I was, had to do some last minute grocery pickup on Christmas Eve. You can imagine what the parking lot looked like. And it was funny. So all these cars are sitting there parked, with their blinker on, waiting to get into the close spots. And I could see it was just a madhouse. So I just went to the all the way to the back of the parking lot. I parked right away, walked into the store, and, I was still saw some of those cars waiting still, got what I needed, came back out. And it was you don't even think twice. You're just well, of course I'll, or if the grocery store isn't too far from your house, we have one that's 1.5 miles from our house. So, maybe you bike there. If you don't need a whole bunch of groceries, you just need something little. And I push a stroller when I run. So one kid in and grocery bags are next to him. And, so there's ways you can still live life and get steps in. It doesn't have to be outside. It can be inside. It can be anywhere, but it's not this really hardcore, I'm gonna hoorah it through. It's really just lifestyle, and it changes everything with how you look at your day. But yeah, wearing this watch actually, I mostly got it because I always lose my phone.
Let's be honest, that's what it's the most.
But it's actually really helpful for when I don't get my rings all the way, and it's made me more aware of the days that I'm not moving enough. And it was very beneficial. And so yeah, that's been helpful for me, just to understand where do I need to make some changes. So it's not typically, you don't need to make all of this change all at once. It's usually just let me focus on the days that I'm not moving much. Let me just start there and figure out what's a sustainable way for me to move more, and then start tacking on from there. So yeah.
And being flexible, because sometimes, we get this hard set idea, this is the only way I can do it.
Right.
But allowing yourself some flexibility, because I have somebody who, she's off, the kids are all off from school this week. And so she's like, I don't know how I'm going to get to the gym. And then she's like, oh, wait a minute, my husband is off this week too. So maybe he can watch the kids versus have to do it when the kids are in school. So, thinking about ways you can actually put it into place and being willing to ask somebody to help you to be able to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I think, a big part of what I've had to learn, especially with having kids, is like actually asking for help and respecting other people's boundaries of not asking too much, respecting their time, things like that. And then, with my husband, kind of making that plan together of, I typically will get up Saturday mornings and go for a run. And like before he kind of gets started on any of the projects he wants to work on, then he'll, have the kids at home. And then when I come in, then I'll take over and then he can do, whatever projects he wants to do. And so we just kind of set a little bit of a tempo like that. And it's helped a lot versus waiting until I have time. It will never happen if I wait until I have time.
That's where I struggle the most right now is with the new little one, is like just finding the time, because my boyfriend is awesome and great, but he's working during the day. He doesn't always come over at night, and my mom watches her all day. So I don't have like another person to watch her, and I can't be like, my little one's a challenge. So my mom is like ready to, she loves her, but she's ready to get rid of her when I come home. And so finding time to work out has been very, very challenging since I've had her. Very challenging.
And that's not uncommon, when they're so little like that, because things change so rapidly. Their nap times are different, that everything changes. And so, even if you can't do 30 minutes at a crack, if you can do 10 minutes and, put her in a sling or whatever to be able to get out and get a walk, or the stroller, because kids need outside too. And so, once she's more mobile, then you're going to have a little bit more time where you can be outside playing with her. But right now that's not the case. So you're probably thinking, how am I going to ever get time for myself? It'll come.
That's, I try to play with her, and I try to, like, for arm work, like throw her up, fly her around,
absolutely.
like, all right, like up and down, let's go, move around. Just trying to do not conventional workout type stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
But you're still being active. You're moving. You're not sitting still.
Yeah.
And man, laundry, those little ones have so much laundry, and I have 2 flights of stairs to run up and down the laundry to check on it. So, just little things like that. And like, instead of, when I used to clean a room or clean a room, I kind of would clean the room, but I wouldn't leave the room. And I'd put like, okay, this is garbage, I need to bring this down. So what I've started to do is, like, instead of like making the piles and then doing it all at once, find something, run it down, come back up, run it, like put it away right away. It may not time-wise be the most efficient, but at least it's giving me more steps.
Right. It's allowing you to be active.
Oh yeah. There's been times where I know I just need to do some strengthening, and I've already been in a clinic too long. Like I gotta get home. Because I've got every piece of equipment you might need, right? Like for functional strengthening. And it's like, I just, like, we gotta get home, gotta get to the family. So I just use them as my weight. Like, we'll do airplanes, so I'll be like on my back, and I'll do like leg presses with kiddos and standing squats, and throw them like a what are they called, like a weighted ball, go into a plank and let them crawl on you. And it's like sometimes that's what I need. It's not going to be my most efficient workout. It's not going to be something where I'm like really pushing to my max and like focused so much on form. But you're smiling and you're laughing and you're using your muscles. And honestly, like, that's a bigger win than like the most structured workout I could have gotten. So like, yeah, I do think right now, with it being winter, like I'm in Florida, so it's a lot easier for me to get outside. Dr. Bobbie's in Chicago, and so that is a barrier that is really tough when it's so bitter cold, to get her all snuggled up in the stroller. I mean, I was there in October and I could barely tolerate it. I was like, this is frigid. Bobbie was like, this is nothing.
Well, and I'm sure it's similar to where you are, but here not only is it cold then, but it's like, I'm getting home at 4 or 5 and it's pitch black out. And this sounds silly, but we have a lot of coyotes around our house. Like, we see them every day in our backyard and stuff. And I'm scared to death to run into one of those things out there. So if it's dark out and I'm by myself, we aren't going walking.
Yeah, no, don't blame you on that. I wouldn't either. You got to think safety first.
Yes.
Yeah, but like
But
if
we
you
just
got stairs, stair repeats, up and down the
Mhm.
stairs. There's all sorts of hip strengthening. Yeah. So it's
Mhm.
just hard to be in your home environment sometimes and in the mode to work out, if that makes
Mhm.
Yes.
sense.
Yeah.
Like I do think that's like a benefit of a gym is that you show up there with your headspace of I'm here to
Mhm.
exercise. And so it can be very difficult to like change that headspace at home because at home there's like the couch where you relax, there's the kitchen where you cook, it's all these like visual cues of what you typically do in that space. So I think sometimes just what I'll do sometimes at home is like in our foyer is just kind of open. I'll like bring the yoga mat in there and then
Mhm.
put like a yoga block and some other stuff so it like makes the space transform, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. And now it feels like a space that's different, even though it's not. And then it helps me kind of get into that mode of like, okay, like I said, I was going to do this. I promised myself I was going to do this. On the way home, I told myself for real,
Mhm.
like before you get into the rigmarole of nighttime routine, like 30 minutes, you got this. Like give
Mhm.
yourself 30. So that's like for me, like I have to transition somehow. Like
Mhm.
something has to be, if I'm gonna run, it's like getting my running vest on, my shoes, it's that transition. It gets my headspace into a different mode, I guess. So something like that might be helpful. Just the yoga mat alone. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
time to
Setting that
exercise.
visual tone. And I kind of call it the Mr. Rogers thing because I don't know if you watched Mr. Rogers, but when he would come inside from being outside, he'd take off his jacket, he'd take off his shoes, he'd put on a sweater, he'd put on, house slippers or whatever. And you kind of do the same transition when you are, coming home and you need that space between being outside and being inside with your kiddos, doing the things you do with them.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that is something I'm big on at our house is the transitions, taking your shoes off, where, our outside voices come to inside voices, like
Mhm. Mhm.
things change when you leave the outdoors and then you come in and we're not running, full tilt and screaming anymore, we're now gonna,
Mhm.
we can move quickly and, have fun and play, but just not at the decibel that we hit outside. So I've found out, I was like, well, if I do that for them, I probably need to do that for myself. It's funny how we kind of think about them first, right? But
Mhm.
it's like that same mindset, it works for me. So which is just kind of, I think, part of just, trying to be a parent and take care of you and maintain, other relationships in your life. There's so many things that you're constantly juggling. So
Mhm.
um so let's talk about like some like the actual goal setting itself, right? So we talked about like let's just figure out what our baseline is.
Mhm.
So and we can do that via journaling, we can use wearable technology. There's all sorts of stuff to just make us aware of where we are starting, whether it's, steps per day as a goal or if there's something that you'd really like to get into that you're not currently doing now,
Mhm.
and what's your why behind that. And so once we kind of do those intros, then Joy, what's the next step that people take, like tangible step?
Well, usually what I do then is I will ask them, okay, what are you able to do this next week? Think about, what you have going on this week and what are some action steps that you can actually take. And once they, think about that, they may come up with, well, I can go for a walk 3 times this week. And so then I might try to find out, well, how long do you think you can walk for? And if they start to say, well, I can do a 60-minute walk, I might be like, let's wait a minute. Are you really sure you can get 60 minutes in? Do you think if you maybe set a smaller goal, say 15 minutes, and you can do that and you still have time, you could potentially do a little bit longer. So find a tiny step and don't think that you're going to do it 7 days, but allow yourself that opportunity to maybe do more, but not set yourself up for an opportunity to fail. Because if you miss it and you fail that one time, then you're much more likely not to even try the next time. So finding that tiny step, that little habit that you can potentially fit into your work week and finding a space where you can actually make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's super key, is like start small. Like that's like a huge thing we talk about on this podcast, is start small. Each small step is what eventually builds into the bigger stuff that you really want. That it doesn't matter what it is, right? So like if you can have success with those small steps, then reward yourself. Like share that success with others if they're in your network of people that are supportive. And I say that with caution, because a lot of people in your life are not actual people in the inner circle that are safe to you, that are supportive. So there are a lot of people in general that might say something if you're like, I did 15 minutes today, I'm so proud of myself. Oh, okay. That, I mean, wow, you did 15. Like they can't read the room. Like you're super pumped. You did 15 minutes consistently. And like you want somebody that's going to hear that and say, nice work, to get that external validation of like, I'm doing it. Like that was really hard to implement because I was tired. I had like, you could list all the barriers to not doing it, right? So easy. I don't have time. I'm tired. I've got all this other stuff. Someone's crying. Someone needs a poopy diaper changed. I mean, you can, I mean, blah, blah, blah. You can name why you can't, but you did it. So, and guess what? The house didn't burn down. Like it was okay. Wow.
Well,
like,
and what I hear is celebrate the wins. Make sure you celebrate those small wins and celebrate it with someone, because I spent a long time paying off debt, and I celebrated every single, whether it was $20 or $200 or $2,000. Like I celebrated every single one I got rid of, because it gave me motivation to keep going. And that's kind of the same idea, is celebrate those small wins.
And even if you can't celebrate it with someone, you can celebrate it with yourself. You can say, I did that. And that is, it helps you as well, because your brain is set to preserve itself. Because if you make a goal that's too big, your brain's going to say, wait, we can't do that. That's too big. We can't do that. We're not going to do that. So choosing that smaller goal and then being able to celebrate that you accomplished it, even if you have like a list of achievements and you write it down and you have a way to check it off, and you can ask yourself, did I do it today? Yes, I did it. So you can check it off. That helps your brain as well, knowing that, okay, I succeeded in this. I can keep doing it. I see the motivation. I have some people who they'll use like a blank calendar, and when they do something, they'll check it off, or they'll put a dot on it, or they'll put a star. They'll do something because they are looking for, how many stars did I get this week? Or how many times did I check it off? And that helps your brain too, because it sees that you're succeeding.
I know Dr. Jess and I have talked about this before, because we definitely do it. But Joy, when you make that to-do list and you realize during that day you've already done 1, 2, 3 items, Jess and I definitely write those items down and cross them off, because we want credit for it.
Yes, absolutely.
Even though they're already done.
Yeah, because if you've already, between the first 2 hours that you've been awake and you've already accomplished 20 things, if you don't have them on your list, you're like, I didn't do anything yet.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's like that, the visual aspect is key. Journaling is just another way of having that visual aspect. I've got some, working with patients, a lot of times what we're working on does take a long time, depending on what we're working on. We might have a pretty long stretch. And so with some people, if I know that it might be a little bit rocky, is we'll start with a journal. And so, like, I mean, it doesn't have to be anything you even buy. I mean, just pieces of paper, staple it together. If you do want some templated ones, we do have some stuff with 2 Gals that's helpful for that. But when you like on the page, all you write is, whatever your goals were that you were working on, you just write, did you achieve them? So you do this each night. Did you achieve it? And if you didn't, that's okay. What was your barrier?
Yeah, what got in the way?
Identify that barrier or barriers, right? Write them down and then decide, what would a step be to be able to tomorrow make sure that that barrier doesn't get me again. So no matter what, even if you didn't get it done, you still identified why you
Mhm.
didn't get it done,
Mhm.
and you learned something. So you still grew. So it doesn't like you're never losing. Like you
Mhm.
really are never losing. And so it's really kind of coming back instead of saying like, I mean, I didn't walk today. I didn't get any of my stretching in today. I don't even want to think about it.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, you could do that and not think about it, but then tomorrow's not going to be any different. So, or we could look at what's difficult and say, I need to grow from this because, again, something we say a lot. Um, if if you haven't succeeded yet, that means you haven't failed enough. So, like, you gotta keep failing and learning from
Mhm.
the failures, and that's where success comes from. Like, there's not like a golden button that you push to enter success. So each failure point is prime opportunity to learn and learn you. So that's customized learning at that point. So
Mhm.
it's fantastic. So every time someone comes in, they're like, "Oh," I'm like, "Well, what were the barriers?" I mean, I did find this, I did find that. I'm like, "Yes,
Mhm.
yes. Are you like, this is amazing. I had no idea these were barriers that you were dealing with." Like, "Oh, so you're not mad at me?" Why in the world would I be mad at you? Like, no chance at all. This is fantastic news. And it's like you start realizing like learning is the journey. So it's
Mhm.
not just the movement, it's the learning that goes along with it. And now we're actually getting something rolling, which is
Mhm.
like, boom, like so good. Now we're actually getting a lifestyle change instead of just, a 3 month, into something and then out again.
Mhm.
Yeah. So as far as like getting further into it, so let's say we start with like we've got a couple days a week. We've decided we're gonna like maybe it's walking, maybe it's running, maybe it's doing stairs inside, maybe it's movement inside the house. Who knows whatever that might be. At what point in time do we start saying, okay, now that we've tackled this, I'm ready to do a little bit more, like to get towards that long-term goal, whatever that long-term goal might be.
Mhm.
Like, how do you work on that?
Usually when they are talking about, okay, I've been able to hit this every, day, and I feel like I can add more time to it. So I kind of leave it in their ballpark when they're ready to actually increase it, because I don't prescribe or tell them you need to do this. They may ask me, what would you do? And I could tell them this is what I would do, but I want to know what you want to do. Are
Mhm.
you able to add 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes? Or do you maybe want to add an additional day and see how you can do this and give them opportunity to figure out what's going to work the best for them, because they're the one who's got to do it and they're the one who needs to figure out, is it going to work for me?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally get that. Like if it's somebody else's dictating every step, then
Mm-hmm.
it's still not yours,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I do think like there's this intuition of I'm not overwhelmed
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I can handle a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a completely different place because it's more like you're the driver, somebody
Mm-hmm.
else isn't driving. So, like a big thing we work on here in the clinic is being the hero of your own story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to take the power away. I want to constantly feed you so you are driving the ship more or less. In a treatment plan, obviously there's things that we have to do in the beginning just to like calm some stuff down. Then we work on, this isn't me anymore. This is
Mm-hmm.
your ship to drive. I'm going to support this ship along the way,
Mm-hmm.
and you drive it where you want it to go. Um, it's it's anybody's guess where it's going to go,
Right.
So, and then that also changes the mindset too on where do I want to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool because you start seeing these changes in other areas of life as well,
Mm-hmm.
and like just more like just feeling more empowered. And I think that's like hugely beneficial. So movement is one of those ways where you can start driving your own ship. You can feel better about yourself, feel stronger. You have more energy. You can keep up a lot better. Like, I don't like not feeling strong. Like, I was not a good, like, I don't like coming back from injury. Nobody does, right? But like, I really like being able to like lift my kids, not even think twice. And so I'm like, I want to get rid of this as quick as I can. Like, and I know other people feel the same. It's like, when you come in, you're like, I'm not feeling good about who I am right now. And part of it is just not having the strength and energy to do and keep up. And so that it only bolsters you. And now it's like the world starts opening up, which is even more fun. Yeah.
Well, and I think, your mindset, we talk about making those small goals and starting smaller than sometimes I think we need to start smaller than we think we need to. And I find that with myself. I remember what I did 10, 15 years ago. I'm 6 months out of having a kid. That hasn't really worked out a ton. Like, I can't do what I used to do when I was a gymnast, but my brain still thinks I can. My body, when I'm doing it, still thinks I can. But 2 days later, I realize I cannot. When I can barely walk because I'm so sore. So I think starting with those really small goals, it also helps change your mindset. So if you've ever taken a break, or for me at least, I'll speak of myself, take a break from working out, getting back in is really hard. Every workout feels challenging. It takes a lot of motivation to get myself to do it. But what happens is if I make those small goals and I make those small and daily activities, all of a sudden it starts changing from something I have to do to something I want to do, and it's part of my routine. And then, so like, it goes from like this thing that I'm like, oh, like, I got to do this. Like, I got to do it. I told myself I'd do it. All right, I'm going to do it. To like, okay, it's part of life. To then we make this third switch where it's like, oh man, if I don't do this, I don't feel great. Or, like you start to go where like you almost need it, like to like feel like yourself. And I think those small goals, small changes help make that feel more natural and not so daunting.
It's like climbing a mountain. You look at the mountain and you're like, how am I ever going to get there? You just have to do it one step at a time, and you do it slowly. And eventually you get higher in up that mountain, and you're able to accomplish what you're looking for trying to do.
Yeah. And I do think it's important to know that there is help out there. So if you really don't feel comfortable, going to a gym, but you have interest in going to the gym, like you feel like that's a place where I could move well, then work with a personal trainer. If it's something where like, I'm just so disorganized everywhere, and I just feel overwhelmed with like taking that first step, but you don't want to go to the gym, it might be working with a life coach, or maybe a personal trainer that will do virtual sessions to help you at home. There's like professionals out there that are specifically trained in this, and so it's okay to ask for help as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with using the community that you have around you. Sometimes there's resources that might be difficult with that. And so there's apps that you can get. And on the apps, they will have predetermined workouts for you. And so that's something that I'm building with the clinic, right? So just because I've had so many people say, I have no idea where to go next. And I've never worked out a day in my life, and I'm 60 years old. And I am now realizing that I want to feel strong. So, but it's like, I'm a physical therapist. Like I can't justify like one-on-one for that kind of stuff. Like, especially if we're billing insurance. At that point, it's like, we gotta like, it's not, skilled intervention. So, there's different things that we've been doing here, like group-based classes, which are like smaller classes where people create a community. That's something you might find at a community center, or other places like that. You might reach out to neighbors and say, hey, does anybody interested in doing a walking group with me? So having some sort of community, whether it's online or in person, it doesn't have to break the bank. You can do it very affordably. But at the same time, like there are other, you can go to a full professional level. So like, it doesn't have to be all on you to get it figured out. So I think that's something that is kind of important to showcase. Like, like, you can start any time. It doesn't matter. Like I've got in our group class that we run, I think my oldest in there is in her 80s.
Mm.
Like, and she's crushing it. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, I want to say mid 80s, like not early 80s. I think the youngest is probably in the 70s, and
Mhm.
none of them have ever been people that work out. We just do functional movement stuff,
Mhm.
like nothing heavy. And they look forward to seeing each other. It's community, they move well, they're getting stronger, and it's just like it makes my heart so happy when I see that class going on. I'm like, I love you. Like, this is so amazing.
It probably gives you incentive too to stay active like they are at this point.
Absolutely. Oh no, they're my heroes. Like, if I can be doing that at mid 80s, like, oh yeah. Absolutely.
And Joy, do you work virtually with your clients,
Yeah, I
correct?
work virtually, and so I don't prescribe exercise or any of the things. It's just that I find out what it is they want to work on, and then I am more of an accountability and support person for them and help them break down those goals so they are able to kind of figure out what it looks like for them. And I'm in the process of working on a side thing, my podcast, but also an additional side thing where I'm building a membership for moms that are looking for accountability and support. So that's in the process. It's technology has been kicking my butt with it, but I'm working on it. So
Dr. Jess and I know a lot about learning technology. It's a love hate process.
yes, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I do think like having accountability in some way, shape, or form
Mhm.
is so important. I mean, I enjoy running, right? That's my thing. I've been doing it now for over 20 years, and I just love it. And when I've gotten up at 5:30 this morning to get my run in, it was, it was not real cold, but it was super dark. It's kind of tired from, Christmas was yesterday. Like,
Mhm.
no, I definitely wouldn't have. My running partner is also my accountability partner for running. And so
Mhm.
I knew I knew he would be out there. So I was up, right? So
Mhm.
I will tell you 0% chance I would have done it on my own. Zero. So kind of finding somebody that will help hold you accountable, whether you're doing it together or like with Joy being an accountability partner via life coach, like, you're going to have to tell her the truth. So you're like,
Mhm.
oh, do I want to tell her that I didn't do it?
Mhm.
Or do I want to tell her I did?
Mhm.
I don't, okay, I'll do it. Right. And then you feel so much
Mhm.
better afterwards. And it's just that getting started, the like getting out of bed, one,
Mhm.
two, three, 4, 5 feet on the floor. Like, I do it
Mhm.
every morning, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 feet on the floor. Come on. And I'm like, okay, that was the hardest part. Feet are on the
Mhm.
floor. Now you can get going. And I count it. I do. Like, I actually count it out to like give me the like,
The motivation, the incentive.
yeah,
Mhm.
because it's like it's a lot easier just to lay there, sleep for another hour.
Mhm.
So all sorts of different strategies to help with success in this journey, and really it being a journey. I mean, meet yourself where you are that day. I mean, there's
Mhm.
days where I am tired, like just tired. So do I push as hard? No, I sure don't. I like, we'll slower pace, or if I'm doing a cross training day, like I'll, do a much lighter workout than normal. Like, if I'm sitting there in the TRX straps and my hands are on the floor trying to do something, I'm like, I'm just gonna lay on my face for a while. Like, maybe, maybe today we're gonna do some yoga and just like do some stretching. And it's like, you know what? That's what I needed today.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
like, there's just at days where you feel really good, then push a little bit more. So it's like, it's not gonna be this like straight shot. I mean, it's just this constant meandering curve is really all it is. And
Mhm.
ideally you are working your way up the mountain, but it's like, you know, like kind of like this. And there's ups and downs,
Mhm.
and you get your feet wet in a creek at some point, and then you
Mhm.
got to take your sock off and get it dry, and like, but you look back and you're like, well, I made it over a creek. Worst thing that happens is my sock got wet. So
Right, I
like,
got a lot further than I thought I was gonna get.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was hard, and I struggled, and it was ugly. And like, if you would have
Mhm.
seen me from the side, people would be thinking like, oh my gosh, like she's not put together. And you're like, cause I'm not. I'm just making it up as I go. I've never done this
Right.
before. So,
Mhm.
but I think that's like the real answer is like, it's just, you're making it up as you go. And so
Mhm.
just kind of, if it seems like if it fits, keep doing it. If it didn't work, change it up and do something else.
Right, exactly. Because sometimes you have to be willing to pivot because maybe you tried something and it wasn't quite what you thought. So
Mhm.
you have to rethink, do I still want to do this? And if I do, how can I change it so it will work?
Right. Yeah. I think pivot is how Dr. Bobbie and I live our lives. We just pivot. Nothing is a straight shot. Like, you might really think for sure, right? Boom. And you're like, all right, well, wasn't that. So, and like, I mean, in the moment when you pivot, is it uncomfortable? Yeah. Yeah. Are you
Mhm.
disappointed? Sure. 100%. And all of those emotions are valid.
Mhm.
And when you have that accountability partner or a journal that you work, write in at the end of the day of identifying your barriers, identify your
Mhm.
wins, celebrate those wins, you'll realize that like the pivot actually pointed you into a better place. Typically,
Mhm.
in the moment, it didn't feel like that. But then when you actually take time to reflect, I think that's what's really important when you're going through any sort of goal setting is
Mhm.
reflecting daily. It's
Mhm.
5 minutes, like for real, like not like, hours and hours, but 5 minutes of like really coming back in and like what what went well and what didn't go well.
Mhm.
It's the only way you're going to learn what goes well and what doesn't go well. It's going to
Mhm.
identify when you need to make the pivot and when you don't. It's going to identify when you're ready for more and when you're not ready for more. So that 5 minutes is just crucial, absolutely crucial. And I prefer doing it at the end of the day because
Mhm.
that's typically when everybody's in bed, the house is calm, you're like in that wind down zone and like
Mhm.
ending your day on a positive note. And then like, I do like doing a gratitude journal of just like 3 things I'm just in general grateful for the day. Because it ends the day on this positive note and then you start the next day like, I got this versus like having those perseverating thoughts of like all of the things that didn't go well. Those will pop out so easily. Just like a negative review will like happen so much
Mhm.
faster than a
Mhm.
positive review. It's
Yes.
just human nature. So we have to constantly work on keeping that glass half full and keeping that mindset full of like, I did accomplish like a good amount today.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, like a couple things went wrong. I broke that glass dish. This did that, like, I mean, oh, you can only imagine like, like all the little things that happen during the day. But in the grand scheme of things, like I still hosted a dinner or I still was able to do this or still able to do
Mhm.
that. And it was like great. So it makes the journey actually possible with that reflection time. So um so I think, Joy, do you have anything that you want to kind of wrap up with, kind of going through our fitness journey of like small, what's the why, small steps, really being your journey and your thing to drive and reflecting accountability, using support in your community,
Mhm.
yeah, all the good stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good pieces that we talked about today. And I'd love to find out from each of you if you have maybe like one tip to give to mamas on, fitness and what would you think about as far as something that they could do actionably, going forward, like in the next week or two.
Um, I think time blocking is key when it comes to fitness. Like, actually, like, I mean, it's in my calendar on my phone and it
Mhm.
alerts me. So like that for me is like I like, and when you see it too, like if you're like, trying to schedule an appointment or, whatever it might be, and you see that on there, it's
Mhm.
not that you can't reschedule it, right? Like if that appointment really needs to go in there and then you can, bump yourself down like 30 minutes or an hour or something like that, but it doesn't go away,
Mhm.
right? So like it's there has to be in your day time that you are doing you and you can't just delete it.
Mhm.
So time blocking is like super key for something that I do. I'm like, oh no, I'm not available on that time. Could you do an hour later? Yeah. Oh, good. Okay, great. You know, that's all it is. You
And
don't have to
setting a
tell them what
time.
you're doing. You're just
So
not
setting a
available.
time to show up for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
And I always make it fun. Like I used to like make colorful, different colors for different things, just whatever makes it enjoyable for you.
mhm.
Um, and then for me, I think the biggest thing that I'd have to say is giving yourself grace.
Mm-hmm.
And realizing that your day is not going to go as you have planned sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay, but do something small. Do something for you. And maybe it is working out with your kid and it's throwing them up in the air 20 times to get the arm workout in instead of lifting weights, or I think that's the biggest thing is grace, a lot of grace. Like, if you get hard on yourself, you're not going to continue down that path. You need to allow for flexibility. Flexibility doesn't mean avoiding and not doing it. Flexibility means what you had planned is changing, and the workout you had planned changed to something else, and that's okay. We still need to do it, but don't be hard on yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So giving yourself a lot of grace, especially as, our lives change and the age of our kids change, things are going to pivot and change, and you may have to rethink how you're doing it.
Oh,
I
you're going to like, it's just
Yeah.
like life is it's ever changing. So what you
Mhm.
did last year is not going to typically going to be the same as this
Right.
year or next year or the year after.
Mhm.
I used to play a lot of tennis, and right now it does not work for my schedule. Running
Mhm.
does work for my schedule, and so it's like, do I enjoy it? Absolutely. Like if I get a chance, do I play? Yeah. But like right now, it's like it's not realistic. It's just in it, if I try and put it in, it's just like it ends up just, it's the middle of the day and it's just such a cluster,
Mhm.
So like, yeah, it's okay for it to look different. It
Mhm.
really is okay. There's lots of things that we can enjoy, and then, kind of as we pivot through, maybe get back to that, in a couple of
Mhm.
years. Who knows? So
Right.
I think a great example I can give for people when I talk about grace is I joined it's like a mom and me class. So it's they call it stroller strides. And it's where my daughter stays in the stroller and I work out, and we obviously play with the kids, and it's great. It's a great class. Love it. And I planned to go last Friday before Christmas, and my daughter for some reason was up all night
Mhm.
and not just doing the greatest, and fell asleep about 2 hours before we were supposed to go to this class, and was still sleeping when we needed to leave. And
Mhm.
she's been up all night. I'm not waking up a 6-month-old just to go to some
Mhm.
workout class. So instead, we needed to do some last minute Christmas shopping. We just walked around stores, like put her in a stroller once she woke up, and we went and we just walked the stores, parked a little further back. And that's kind of not the same, not what I wanted, but hey, I still got out there. We were still walking, and I may have gotten more steps in going to different stores and walking around.
Right.
But just it looked different than what I had planned.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great example.
Mhm. And that's okay, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
and it's okay, which is like, I think, the key. So awesome. So, all right. Well, I think that'll wrap it up for the episode today. Joy, thank you so much for being willing to do this podcast, a shared podcast today. I think it's helpful when we have just other minds, everybody like sharing their insights, I think is huge. So, with two gals, stay tuned. We're going to stay into our, January is all about really getting started with a couple of different types of topics, nutrition and some other topics that we're going to be talking about with like goal setting and those subtopics. So Joy, what do you have coming up on your next topics?
Well, each month is going to have a different topic, and January is going to start with fitness because everybody in January all of a sudden decides that they need to get fit. So I'm going to have some topics around that and setting some goals around that as well.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. So, all right, everybody. Well,
All
have a
right.
great rest of your day.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Bye.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the episode today. If you would like to learn more about how Two Gals can support you, then join our Two Gals Insiders membership, which can be found at www.2-gals.com. Also, don't forget, follow us on social media. We're on Facebook as well as Instagram. Okay, everybody. Bye. Enjoy your week.